right, welcome everyone on this windy, rainy day. Here we are in the middle of a big storm. It is February 2nd, and February 2nd is Candlemas, Brigit's Day, Groundhog Day, Puscatawny Phil, and it is right exactly in the middle of the season of winter. So this is called a cross-quarter holiday, exactly in the middle. So exactly in the middle of winter. We have 4 seasons basically in our calendar: the winter, the spring, the summer, and the fall. So when you think of winter, when winter comes into your mind, what are some of the characteristics of winter that come into your mind? Just name them, anything. Fires, oh, to keep warm. That's like the opposite of the snow. Okay, cold, hot chocolate. Okay, so think of the winter itself. How is it? How is it in winter? What is winter like?
Darker, barren.
Dark, cold, barren, stormy, snowy,
Clear.
That's interesting.
Windy.
Clear, windy. Okay, so all those things characterize winter. What was
A lot
that?
of dead and decay.
Death, things
Wet.
being dead, wet. Okay, what about when you think of spring, what comes to mind?
New beginning.
Spring, new beginnings,
Green.
sprouts,
Blossoming.
the blossoming, sprouting. So everything feels like it's coming back to life in spring. Okay, what about summer?
Hot.
Heat,
Harvest.
the harvest, yeah,
To fruition.
fruition, warmth,
Swimming.
Oh, what was swimming, yeah, swimming. Vacations, right? Because we can move about, and we move about in summer, right? Okay, and what about fall?
Release, letting go.
Release, let go,
Leaves falling.
leaves
Harbinger of
falling. What was that?
Harbinger of winter.
The harbinger of winter. Oh yeah, there's a lot of foreshadowing in the fall, foreshadowing of winter. Yeah.
That's Indian summer at the same time.
And Indian summer at the same time, right? So the heat, it can be a combination of heat, cold, and
Going
some,
inside.
depending on where you live, you might not even know what it's going to be like. It might be snowing in September, it might surprise you, or it could be deathly hot in September, who knows, in the same place, so yeah, so fall is there's uncertainty, but I suppose there's uncertainty in all the seasons. But the fall is like a dropping down, right?
Going inside. Starting projects.
Oh, going inside in fall, starting projects where they would be inside projects, not outside projects, right. Because we would probably start outside projects in another season, like maybe spring, right? And so we're in inside projects in the fall. Okay, so what do these elements do if you take them together, all together as one? What are they doing on the planet? What is happening on the planet?
It's a cycle of life.
Cycle of life. So it's like a cycle of life. And what is that cycle of life? When you look at the cycle of life, what's happening within that cycle of life as a whole?
Birth,
Death and rebirth. That's good. Death and rebirth. I mean, that's pretty sophisticated, because that means we have to look at the whole thing taken together as one. These elements also work to balance the planet, the entire planet, and maintain particular zones on the planet. Like they actually maintain the planet as a biosphere, and the biosphere maintains, for example, a certain temperature range in which life can be born, life as we know it can be born and can survive. So it's all, very complex. It's very complex workings, and even within the winter, where today we're in the winter, we're in the very middle of winter, and we are having this very complex interaction of the movement of wind, the movement of rain, and even the intermissions of sun and warmth happening all at the same time. So it's cold, warm, and it's all balancing. So do you believe these, anything that comes to your mind, do you believe these elements themselves are alive? I mean, they're doing a pretty sophisticated job, okay? So I just want to say they're doing a sophisticated job. Do you think they're alive?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, well, everybody here is saying, yeah. Well, that's interesting, because I think a lot of people would say no. It's some kind of a inanimate interactions of some kind. Okay, so but the next question would be, of course, the next question is, do you think the earth is alive?
Yes.
Earth, like as a biosphere. And everybody's saying absolutely, right? You can hear that. Absolutely. The earth is alive as a biosphere. And even James Lovelock, who wrote about it in Gaia, the Gaia hypothesis, the Gaia theory, didn't go so far as to say the earth was alive. That was in the 60s. That would have been, he may have believed the earth was alive, but he went to the point of saying earth is the most amazing cybernetic, he called it cybernetic system you could ever imagine. Cybernetic means it's a feedback system, like all these feedback loops that come back, and feed into it. To like if there's a pressure drop or something like that, then warm air is going to rush in or something like that, but it's a feedback system. So he outlined the whole feedback system of the planet and called it the Gaia hypothesis. Gaia. So he used this old Greek word, right, for the name of the earth as goddess, the earth goddess. So he used the idea, and he posited this idea that everything was interconnected, and he posed it to the scientific community, and he was completely dissed for many years. So I don't remember the exact year the book came out, but it was in the 60s. And then fast forward to 2019, where we are today, basically the scientific community now accepts his theory as being correct, that everything is interconnected. Not that people would go so far as to say it's alive, because then we have to discuss what it means for something to be alive, or that it's conscious. Is Earth itself conscious? But these are things that we ourselves, as people who are called, you might say, into a deep understanding of things. We are called to the spiritual path because we are called to some kind of cosmological and cosmic alignment. So cosmological would be, that's the story we tell about it. The story we would tell about who we are, because this is going to be central to then how we act. The story that we tell about it becomes central to who we become, both our ethical system and then also our personality that comes out of this. So going back to these 4 seasons for a minute, so winter is like a place of dormancy and sleep, right? Spring is a time of blossoming. Summer is a time of harvesting. I'm just picking one word. Fall would be a time of the second harvest and then the shutting down. And we go through this process of these 4 seasons in our lives. Like we could look at our life that way. Like sometimes people say, oh, I just thought of a song, now the days are short, I'm in the autumn of the year, and I think of my life like vintage wine, from final kegs, from the brim to the dregs, etc. Okay, so we think of the seasons of our lives. And we can also think of the seasons as being the seasons of the day, even. So we get up, we're filled with energy, and then we wind down, and then we go to sleep, And this is also true with the plants. They wake up when the sun comes up. Of course, we have nocturnal animals and such, but a lot of us work on the same schedule, of the awakening and then going dormant into the sleep, including the plants, except the possibly nocturnal plants, and so on. But we can look at this as a metaphor, is what I'm trying to say. A metaphor, and it's been a metaphor for humans from the beginning. So we have the winter, the spring, the summer, the fall, and that creates like a circle of being or a spiral of being with 4 points basically on this, and creates a circle cross kind of a dynamic, like you have a cross of the 4 seasons with the circle going around it in a continual spiral. And then one of the most amazing things that we learn, if we look at the whole spiral or the whole cycle, is at the end of winter, we learn, that which seemed dead is not dead. It's not dead. It's not dead. So you look at a tree and it looks completely dead, and all of a sudden it bursts into bloom, or you have a field, a dead field, something that looks dead, and then suddenly it's filled with growing things, with flowers, with grass. Everything is springing up everywhere. And just a few days ago, I was noticing that where I was walking in ungroomed land, I was actually sitting meditating in ungroomed land, wild land. And when I came out of that meditation, I saw that all of the plants around me, I noticed that they were all edible and medicinal. And then as I walked back into civilization, like 2 blocks back into civilization, and I saw the groomed lawns and so on, I saw that the plants were less and less edible and less medicinal. So I was thinking, see, Earth knows what it's doing. It's got all this stuff going. If we pay attention, it's all there. So what was dead, what seemed dead is not dead. What seemed dead is not dead. And it is the most amazing, awesome thing. And it has inspired awe in our species from the beginning. Deep awe. This cycle. When we watch it, when we look at the whole cycle. And what we've done as a result, as humans, is we have, in a sense, humanized the elements in a way, personified the elements in order to understand them better and the movement of these elements. And for example, we have either the elements have almost like a personality, almost like a what is it?
Consciousness?
Either they have a consciousness and something almost like a personality, or we as humans attribute something like a personality to these elements and to these seasons. And for example, here are some examples. I'll give you this is the briefest. Okay, winter. Today, Candlemas, Brigit's Day. So this has been a day that has been attributed to the goddess, the triple goddess Brigit in Ireland, for time immemorial. Spring, Mary, May Day, the earth coming alive and blossoming. Summer, Demeter. These were just some that came into my mind. The harvest, Greek goddess, the grain, the goddess of the grain. Fall, Inanna, going down to getting ready to go down into the death of winter. And then in every one of those stories, of those 4 goddesses, for example, I'm putting Mary in as goddess. In those 4 stories, there is a complete round of being and cycling, often that involves the children as well. So the offspring, and it may also involve the older generation, and the movement through the cycling of those generations. Okay, so this brings us then to how we conceptualize this and how we characterize this. So I was thinking of this little talk I'm doing as being called The Goddess and the Tree of Life. So the Goddess and the Tree of Life. So now we come to, so through all the seasons, we come to the idea of the Tree of Life on Earth. The Tree of Life as Earth. The Tree of Life evolves, and it evolves in accordance with the elements on Earth, right? And moves through all the cycles, all the generations, everything that the Tree of Life represents. Then we can actually move to something that we have all studied, which is the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. So then on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, which is an abstraction of all of this, we can place the elements, and we can also place the movements of each element through its cycles. Beyond that, we can even place what you might call the deities. So, for example, if we were talking about the goddess or many goddesses, where would we place the goddess or the many goddesses on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life? Somebody make it up. Just make it up. If we were going to place the goddesses on the tree,
She's the great goddess.
Bina,
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah.
That's number 3. That's the sphere number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, and indeed, that is basically where we would place the goddesses, is sphere number 3. Okay, and that's the sphere where the mothers reside. The mother. The god or gods, well, where would the god or gods be placed?
Two.
Exactly, right. See, now you're on it. Now you're on the wavelength. Okay, and so if the gods and goddesses, if they become in some way the parents of the children of Earth, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case, but where would the children of Earth be placed?
4.
Possibly, but not, okay, wouldn't really be 4, and the reason it's not 4 is because 4 is not a humanoid place. There are only 4 humanoid zones. I'm going to give you the answer on the Tree of Life. 6. 6, because when we look at the Tree of Life, the 6th sphere is the sphere where the brothers live, and the brothers are the first humanoid form that appears. So we have fathers, mothers, brothers. So it's actually sphere number 6 is where the children of the earth, so to speak, would live, or even potentially the children of gods and goddesses. Like, okay, this may be getting too complicated, but there's one way that you can view the upper triangle of the Tree of Life, and this is the 1, 2, and 3 taken together. They are considered, with one view of the Tree of Life, it's called the supernal triangle or the cosmological triangle, and those 3 constitute the potential for life before life is created. And then for life to be created, you have to, according to the diagram of the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, the potential for life has to cross the abyss from one world into another, and then that becomes manifestation. So the first person, the first manifest human, is in sphere 6, because spheres 4 and 5 are sets of qualities, but they're not people. They're just sets of qualities. 4 is a place of stabilization, 5 is a place of cataclysm. I don't want to go into that right now, but 6 is where the brothers live, the sons. So that's the first place. Okay, so then when we come in at a certain time. As humans, we come in at a certain time of the year, and we come in a particular season of the year. So we can attribute, this is pure attribution, but we can attribute something significant to our birthday and the time we come in to create more meaning in our lives. This is about creating meaning. This is the work of the spiritual student, is to create the meaning. Even if we live in a zone of utter chaos, our job is to find order in the chaos, put things together, and I will say be part of the solution. And part of the way we're part of the solution is by seeing the unity and the order and how things fit. And even with the chaos, how that could be part of the order in some way, so that we can hold it. We can be big enough to hold it. So if we look at the tarot calendar, and there's actually a calendar of the entire tarot deck that was put forth by people, that was created maybe 200 years ago or so. I think of it 7 generations ago, but I have this calendar in the Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit book, and you can see the outline of the calendar. You can see where your birthday falls, which season. Well, you should already know the season, but you can also see which other cards fall on your particular birthday. Okay, so if we begin to see ourselves in this way as seasonal, as having come in a particular season, and then drawing upon the season that we came in with for part of our life's work starts to take on more meaning. So right now, we're a group of women, so we're talking about essentially it's our how will we find our mission, and how will we activate our mission in life? Do we have a mission? Okay, and so just to start with, well, what season were you born in? What are your cards on the tarot calendar? And we find ourselves as in a place where we could think of ourselves as a priestess of winter, a priestess of spring, a priestess of summer, a priestess of fall. We could imagine ourselves wearing cloaks of these colors. Priestess of winter, who would be the priestess of wind, because the tarot suit of wind, of air, corresponds with winter. A priestess of spring in the colors of earth, in the cloak of earth, the raiment of earth, because earth matches the season of spring in tarot, and summer is fire, priestess of fire, and fall is water, priestess of water. Yellow is the color, the primary color of winter, although there are many other colors associated with it in the tarot, but yellow is the primary color. Green is the color for spring, red the color for summer, and blue is the color for fall. So that is wind, earth, fire, and water, as symbolized by the 4 sisters in the Tarot of the Spirit. So those 4 sisters would be Wind Sister, Priestess of the Power of Truth Divine, because wind is related to the mind and it's related to consciousness. Not only to winter, but to consciousness itself. And I think what you're bringing up about this idea of the resurrection, you might say, that comes out of winter is central to consciousness and central to, our belief system and what we're coming forward with. So there's the wind sister, and then there is the earth sister, and she is the priestess of the power of spring, and she is ready. She is also called the mountain in fruition. And she is ready for everything to begin to bloom, even though she doesn't know what's coming, what's going to befall her, what's in front of her. She is ready for any initiation that might come about. And then there is the priestess of summer, the fire sister. And fire sister is the priestess of the power of spirit, spiritual energy. And then we have the water sister for the fall. Water, love. She's the priestess of the power of love divine. So depending on where your birthday falls, you can imagine yourself wearing the cloak of winter, of spring, of summer, of fall. And what happens when you try that on? What happens, when you move through that? And when we work with the tree of life, that is the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, we are always working with those 4 elements, continually working with the 4 elements and how those 4 elements come about. So the idea of the sisters in the tarot, they're all priestesses, and each of these priestesses has her service to the earth and to earth's elements. So you could imagine that the priestess of winter would have certain types of service that she would be engaged in, or the priestess of spring or summer or fall, that this will call out different elements and different aspects of ourselves. So these impulses that we have, this is just one way of organizing. I'm not saying this is the truth. I'm saying this is one way that we can think about things, because ultimately we will embrace all of the elements. But it gives us a way in. It's like a way in and a way to understand ourselves. These impulses that we have to arrive at this kind of understanding are impulses that have been symbolized from time immemorial and held in ceremonial practices. So we have an impulse to belong, to be part of this movement, to be part of this planet, and to be part of this this seasonality and all this movement. And we hold those things in ceremonial practices. And so, for example, today is Brigit's Day, Candlemas, Imbolc, and it was customary in the Irish world, out into the Celtic world on this day, for priestesses to come together to pray with candles at a body of water beside a sacred well. It was called the sacred well, and well means, generally, well means spring, a spring, like a live spring. So, usually if you hear the word well, primarily what people are talking about is a spring. And so these are places that become very, very sacred places, where the water comes out of the ground, because the water is extremely sacred to us. We are made of water. This is the planet of water. We can't live without water. Biologists define life as being made of water. That's one of the definitions of life, that it contains water. There are like 8 definitions. I actually, personally, I argue with the biological definition of life, because I do believe I believe rocks are alive. They don't necessarily have a lot of water in them, but it depends on how you look at it. But the field of biology can't function without very strict definitions, nor can any other field. So I respect that and I understand that. So the priestesses would come to the water, to the sacred well, to pray with candles. And at that time on Candlemas, they would be asking to receive their vows, and they would be giving their vows, iterating their vows publicly with the sisterhood for the coming year. So they're the water protectors. They're bringing the fire, they're protecting the water, they're relating with the water, and they're coming up with their vows. So just a little bit about the goddess Brigit. So Brigit's known as the fiery arrow. She's a fire goddess, but she's celebrated in the middle of winter. So she really actually holds all of the elements at once. She's a triple goddess, maiden, mother, and crone. She's the big goddess. She is also the creator, and or you could call it the allurer of springs, rivers, and wells. So she's very much involved with fire and water. She's life force energy. And what it means to be an allurer of a spring, a river, or a well is that means she calls them out. So the priestesses who have their candles at the well, they're also calling the water to come. Come, water, come. Come out, come out, come out. February 2nd is the fire feast. February 1st or February 2nd is a fire feast. And why is it a fire feast? You know, it's because the people are there with their candles. The candle is a devotional, bringing the spirit, bringing the fire to the well. And Brigit is said to breathe life into winter, who is dead. Okay, so the fire is life, and the fire helps bring the winter alive, who is dead. So the breath begins, the breath of winter. So right now we're halfway through the winter, right? So today is the day that the winter is called into awakening. So these are ancient celebrations, right? So halfway through the winter is already called into awakening. Okay, so, and again, so the priestesses would come to the fire, to bringing the fire to the well, and the vows would awaken as the winter awakens. So that's more of the resurrection, more of the feeling of that resurrection. So this would be a day of oracles, of the fire, the water, the breath, which brings everything alive anew, and then the recreation of earth coming alive. I love the idea of going to the waters to seek a vision, especially going to the living waters to seek a vision. And now I also love the idea of going to the waters not only to seek a vision, but also to help enact a healing of the waters, because, well, I'm not going to go into it, but I'm just going to say even our bloodstream, which is water, is running plastic. Pretty much everyone's bloodstream has a lot of plastic in it right now. So multiply that out over the planet. Healing. We need a lot of healing. But I want to go back now to the first well, which is also called the first well and the well of return, the sacred well. So this is when the goddess Brigit brought the water up. And it was said that she was so beautiful, she was so alluring, that the water sprang out to be with her. That was the idea. So here comes the first well, and it's also the well of return. And in this well then live salmon. The salmon fishes, the salmons, the sacred salmons. And Brigit's so alluring that the well jumps its boundaries, the spring jumps and becomes 7 rivers, and the salmon flow down the rivers. But coming from the first well, or the sacred well, these salmon have been dining on hazelnuts, because the well is surrounded by hazelnut trees. So here comes the first spring, completely surrounded by hazelnut trees. The nuts drop down into the water. The salmon that appear eat the hazelnuts. Okay, so what do you think a hazelnut contains? Just think about it for a minute. What's a hazelnut? What's inside a hazelnut, do you think? Falling out of the trees. A seed. What's inside the seed?
Life, potentially.
Yeah, okay. So the story is exactly. So the story, what is it?
The imaginal cells.
The imaginal cells. Okay, so the story about what the hazelnut is that the seeds falling out of the trees, or nuts falling out of the trees, contain within them the entire legacy, the entire ancestry, the blueprint, the blueprint for going forward and the future of all the trees. So even one tree can create a forest, right? So that's the story behind it. So that here come the salmon, and the salmon are called the salmon of wisdom. So the salmon are coming, they're scarfing up the hazelnuts. Okay, so then the salmon take off down the rivers, and who eats the salmon? Just make up something.
Bears.
Yeah, bears, people, whatever. Anybody eats a salmon, right? Okay, so what happens to a person who eats a salmon of wisdom?
They get wise.
Yeah, that's right. The story is that the person who eats the salmon of knowledge or the salmon of wisdom becomes as knowing as the salmon, becomes as wise as the salmon, is all knowing of the salmon. And if a cat eats a salmon, a cat becomes wise. And if you hear the meow of a cat, it's always good luck. Good luck. Okay, so this is the story of eternal life. This is the story of eternal life. Who has eaten of the fish? Who has eaten of the nut? Who has jumped out after the beauty which created the whole thing in the first place? So Brigit has been called a saint and a goddess, the triple goddess, Maiden Mother Crone. She's called the triple muse. She's the goddess of heaven and earth, worshipped at the sacred wells, and she represents the interweaving of worlds. She represents war and peace. It is said that she brings mist to stop wars, because she's also the goddess of waters. She's the goddess of poetry. She's the goddess of storytelling. It is said about Brigit, or Brigit said, rather, this is a quote from Brigit of Kildare, "Stir into flame the gift that is you." That comes from your own storytelling. Stir into flame the gift that is you. She's the goddess of smithcraft, of sexuality, and childbirth. She is the goddess of many levels and many layers. Okay. Now, I also want to mention that on the tarot calendar, today is the day of the Six of Wind, and all of the cross-quarter holidays fall on one of the sixes. So today is the Six of Wind, Brigit's Day. Okay, I just want to say, I wanted to show you a picture of the Six of Wind. I have a larger picture of the Six of Wind that's 8.5 by 11. And I have the whole tarot deck that's 8.5 by 11. Okay, so I went to get the Six of Wind so I could show it to you. I wanted to hold it up and ask you, what do you see in the picture? And lo and behold, in my book with the pictures, I keep them filed in a book. My book went from the five of wind to the seven of wind, and there was no six. And so I was really dismayed. So I must not have used the Six of Wind, is what I thought. And then I started thinking, wait, something's wrong. I looked through the whole book to see if it was misplaced, but it wasn't misplaced. This is a book where you can pull out the pictures, right? So it wasn't misplaced. It wasn't anywhere in the book. I finally found it tucked into the same sleeve that the five of wind was in. It was behind it, hiding. So I must have done that when I originally filed them. But I thought it was interesting because it came across then suddenly like a tarot reading. because the 5 of wind is fear. It's the card of fear. And we are permeated by fear right now. Our country is permeated by fear. Our culture is permeated by fear. We have got fear going at every level. So instead of just pulling it out saying, oh, here it is, it's stuck into the same sleeve as the 5. I thought, we need to see the 5. We need to look at the 5. We need to understand that we have a fear going on right now of the unknown future. And we are going to, through our intention, and I'm talking about the people here in this room, are going to move through the fear by seeking the next card, which is the card of today, the 6 of wind, clarity.
Whoa, what a difference.
Yeah, this is clarity. This is the clarity that emerges out of the fear. And I do want to say something that strikes me about the fear card is the astrology on the card. Because the astrology on the card of fear is Venus in Aquarius. And when you start thinking about Venus in Aquarius, Aquarius is new thought. Venus is love. I'm generalizing. Love of new thought. Why would that create fear? Well, partly it's because we're afraid of change. We don't know what it's going to bring. We might have to make a big leap. We don't know what kind of leaps we're going to have to make. And part of making the leap is leaping into clarity. And so when we leap into clarity, we have Mercury in Aquarius. And Mercury is all about communication. So communication and new thought. Now, when you look at this card, the 6 of wind, this was my original intention, what do you see in the card symbolically? Anything strike you when you look at the card?
There's the cross.
There's
a lot of light.
Light,
A lot of
openness.
There's
It's yellow. Okay, what were we just talking about with yellow? What is that connected with?
winter.
Yeah, and what is winter connected with? What element? Wind. And what is wind connected with
Winds of
symbolically? Winds of change. And
Intellect.
what is it?
Intellect.
The intellect, mind, consciousness. Okay, so it's like a light going on. Whenever you see the yellow, it's related to sphere number 6. Yellow lives in sphere number 6, and it also lives in winter. Okay, so any other things you notice on this card when you're looking at it?
Feels like an awakening, like the beginning of something too.
Awakening, a beginning, a morning. Yes, and I'll mention a couple of other things on the card that you may or may not be able to see. In the diamond in the middle, there are wings. It's wings. Okay, so what those wings represent is messages that are coming to us. Messages, insights, visions, things that are moving through. It's a dove, like the wings of the dove. And then we also have behind the card, in the background, abstract, a chalice. Can you see the chalice? See the chalice? Chalice. Background of the card is a chalice.
Oh,
Through the middle of the card,
Yeah.
through the middle of the card, right down through the middle of the card, we have a blade. Okay, it's a blade. This is the card of the balance of the chalice and the blade, the 6 of wind. And that's where we are today. The chalice, what does the chalice represent?
Feminine.
The female, feminine, and it also represents receptivity. What was that? The vessel, and receiving and holding. And it also, because it's receptivity and it represents receiving and holding, it also represents listening, taking in. Okay, what does the blade represent?
Cutting through.
Cutting through
Masculine.
Male.
the male, divine masculine. Chalice represents divine feminine, right? The blade is divine masculine. In its exalted form. Divine masculine. Getting to the point, it's represents the mind and the intellect and the suit of wind, whereas the chalice represents the suit of water. which is the holding and the love. Well, this card is the perfect balance between those two. So you could say this is the perfect balance between heart and mind with messages coming in. And if it's a card of communication about new thought, that's Mercury in Aquarius, that this card would take us into equal amounts of giving and receiving, listening and contributing like this, equal amounts. So this is the card of this day. And I find it interesting that the card of this day is that it happens to correlate with midwinter and Brigit's day. Okay, what does anyone else find that interesting? Can anybody feel like this very interesting correlation of all these elements coming together today?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting. I think it's interesting just that the sixes, which the six in the Tree of Life, on the diagram of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, the six is the very middle of the Tree of Life, where everything comes together, where everything balances, and where everything becomes completely unified and synergistic. It's all synergy in the center of the tree. Two triangles coming together. Male triangle, female triangle. We both, all of us, contain all of those energies at the same time. But the ones we want to bring forth at this time, the balanced energies within ourselves, balanced energies, balanced form of interaction, synergistic form of interaction. In the moment, we are seeking our vision, finding our mission, and creating our vows for the coming year. Because today is the traditional day of the of reconsecration of the vow ceremony. Yes.
Can you talk a little about the diamond symbology on there?
The diamonds. Okay, so throughout the Tarot of the Spirit, we see a diamond happening. Oh, that's a big question. Can you talk more about the diamond? Because the symbol of the diamond is called the diamond sun, and it represents a higher form of consciousness. It's like I think it's a dodecahedron. Anyway, my family, where it came from is my family was on Camelback Mountain outside of Boise, Idaho, during the harmonic convergence. When we were doing the tarot. My aunt, my mother, my two kids, my brother, and we were all up on top of Camelback Mountain, which camel is the symbol of the priestess, the high priestess. Mm-hmm. So we were up on Camelback Mountain, which really is a hill. When you come from Colorado, as I do, there's a difference between the mountains outside of Boise and the ones outside of Denver. Anyway, right. So it's really a hill, but they call it Camelback Mountain. So we're up on the mountain. We had climbed up there in the dark with flashlights, and the sun came up, and this was a moment of alignment, and I can't remember the date, I'm sorry, but anyway, the sun came up. Every single one of us standing in that circle, even the little kids, had the same vision. We closed our eyes and we had the same inner vision, which we compared later, and it was a diamond. It turned into a diamond, and we all saw the diamond, and we called it the diamond sun, and we knew it represented the future. We had made a little circle with crystals, and so we knew it was the future that we would participate in creating. Even my brother. Mm. He knew. He felt it. We could feel it. The amazing thing was on that date, by the way, so then it came in the Tarot of the Spirit that it became a repeating symbol of a higher form of consciousness. But it came out of that day. The harmonic convergence is where the form came from. And I lost what I was going to say about that. Oh, and when the sun came up, so we thought we were alone. And as the sun came up, we saw that every hill, as far as you could see, had people on the top of it. We saw silhouettes everywhere. This is Boise, Idaho. Okay, I'll say no more about that. Okay, so the idea is to reach that form of clarity within ourselves, or to implement the form of clarity, to create it, to set this clarity through our intentions, to stir into flame the gift that is you. That is the idea, to make it happen. So our method today will be to light a candle, to call in the divine and balanced energies, to call in the goddess Brigit, she who awakens the breath of spring, to take our candle representing the spirit of our own being, to place it before a body of water, and even in that act, to bless the water and ask for the healing of the water, to ask for the water to be whole, to ask for humanity to be whole, to ask for the earth to be whole, and to ask for our vows for the coming year, to ask to receive our vows for the coming year. And we know, when we know what our vows are, we will know what our mission is. The idea is to stir into flame the gift that is you, that is from Brigit, for thou art the tree of life.